John Allen is a columnist with Roll Call. He's in our Washington bureau today. And here in New York, Republican strategist and CBSN political contributor Leslie Sanchez. Leslie, I want to start with you because we're kind of in an interesting spot right here. Trump is deflecting almost a little bit any part of blame in any of this. But in the beginning of his campaigning, he would kind of go along with people in the crowd and kind of amp them up and get them going. So what's the shift and change here?
I don't know that there is a lot of daylight between the two actions. In one sense, he was a bit encouraging it, which is why there is such a ramification and a pushback by the Republican candidates, the media, and certainly the individuals calling for peace or calling for some sort of amping down the toxic leverage that he has. But he has a responsibility there, and instead he's saying it's not my fault. I didn't do anything. I didn't see this. It's just kind of growing organically. The problem is it has something that I like to call confirmation bias. If you already felt that this was a country that's off the rails, that needs to go in another direction, like his supporters, this is a perfect example of people ruining free speech, not letting America be great. If you're of the mindset that he is pushing a racist agenda, an anti-immigrant movement, kind of banning Mexicans and everybody else, then it confirms that bias as well. And in those individual perceptions, it creates more intensity. So we are seeing more and more heat rather than calming it down.
John, I have to ask you, are we kind of at a turning point here in the election?
I don't know. I think there'd be a lot of people who would hope that there was a turning point away from this kind of chaos. Donald Trump has a right to hold rallies. His supporters have a right to be able to hear him. Protesters have a right to be heard and then quickly be whisked out of auditoriums where they protest. But what he doesn't have a right to do is to incite violence. And I think, sadly what we've seen here, as Leslie was alluding to before, Donald Trump has gone out there and said you ought to punch protesters, and I hope these guys get taken out on stretchers in the past. And that may not be an imminent incitement of violence, but it certainly creates this atmosphere that Leslie was talking about, where everything's amped up and intense.
Well,
but I don't know that we see a turning point here, because Donald Trump isn't looking to turn that around. He's looking to create it.
Well, I have to ask you too, quickly. Trump has accused Bernie Sanders of sending his supporters in to disrupt these events. What do you think about that? Because there's even now, a little back and forth on Twitter and those types of things.
Well, there are definitely there were reports of people chanting Bernie during the event the other night. That doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders sent them in. Those are two totally different things. And I don't think that Bernie Sanders would see a whole lot of benefit to sending people in to basically start trouble at a Trump rally and create a situation of violence, because I don't think that benefits Bernie Sanders in any way. I think if you were the Sanders campaign, you'd look at what was going on, people chanting Bernie, reports of that at least, and look at that as something that is hurtful to your campaign.
And that's, Leslie, we just showed a Twitter message from Donald Trump now saying, kind of watch out. We may send people.
Be careful.
Bernie
supporters to be careful. I think that's a challenge Donald Trump does consistently through the campaign. He did it with Hillary Clinton when he was talking about, is he sexist in any way? When those challenges came out, he attacked that way. He does these threats, which is part of the persona, and I think very much it's a consistent theme. But here's the issue: once we cross over from all of the political junkies who are kind of at a distance watching this political theater unravel, it does get into their personal bias. It does start to amp up these conversations people are having at home. It does change the entire conversation, and it makes people mad, regardless of where you were and your position on this. That's why the electricity around this has to be tapped down so quickly and so dramatically, because these are the types of movements that gain in momentum. They don't slow down naturally.
Well, I wanted to ask both of you, but Leslie, let's start with you. I think what's kind of interesting here, when we were doing the introduction to this segment, even, you now hear his rivals totally changing gear and not necessarily going after him, but saying that, he's got to calm down. We need all this to simmer down. And that when you watch the last debate, they were all saying they would support whoever the nominee was. It's now seeming to be pretty clear that they're not in support of Donald Trump. So what does the Republican Party do?
Oh, it's a very difficult situation. It's difficult for the chairman of the party, for our establishment, our leadership, certainly, because like you see in Latin America, you can't control a mob. Once these things get moving, you cannot let it get so big that it becomes untenuous, and it's just out of control. And it threatens the political structure, it threatens the party conversations. These are serious conversations and votes that are taking place for the leader of the free world. And we're getting so off the rails in terms of that conversation. Nobody's talking policy. Now you have all the campaigns talking about violence and rallies. And they're, very much putting pressure on the leading Republican nominee to take leadership on all of this. And he's still yet to do that. That's what the challenge is going to be. So the question is, I think what we're going to see in the next couple of days is, will the leadership again step forward, start doing something about it? Other than denouncements, are they going to take bigger action? You're seeing $10 million in negative ads right now. Well, less than that, $10 million in ads in Florida trying to help Marco Rubio. Are there other efforts that are going to start to gel so that they can slow this momentum again?
Yeah, John, where do you think things need to go? How do we turn this back around so it's not just about the violence and chaos at some of these rallies?
Well, I think to some extent the equivalency that's attributed to Trump and the protesters needs to go away. I mean, you hear Republican candidates, it sounds like they're trying to take advantage a little bit of the situation here, where there are people who are mortified by the chaos that's going on, but at the same time, the first thing out of their mouth is the protesters are wrong, and then Donald Trump is wrong. And the thing is, I think it's going to take more than what we've seen, and probably more than people who are political candidates coming out against Donald Trump. You saw Mitt Romney doing it. I mean, I wonder if there are any other Republican elders, and I don't mean against him politically. I mean against this sort of behavior. Not to say that they need to come out against Donald Trump and say don't elect him, but to come out and say it's not appropriate to threaten violence against people at political rallies. Or in the case of that tweet, I mean, we're going to send our guys to your rallies after you've incited your guys to commit acts of violence. Sounds like a threat against Bernie Sanders and his people. And that, I mean, if we saw that going on in a third world country during a political election, we would denounce it as inappropriate. We would denounce it as an intimidation, denounce it as a sign of an election gone wrong. So, I mean, I think somebody's got to stand up and say that this is inappropriate, and it can't just be those political candidates who have something to gain from it because they have a little bit less credibility simply because they're in a political contest with Trump.
What is so striking to me is a lot of politicals and journalists get asked to go to third world countries like John's talking about, or go to Northern Africa, or for any kind of democratic elections to be observers and call out exactly this type of thing. And now you have the United States in the middle of something you would never really think would happen. This is not the 60s. And it's really, I think that's why it's becoming a concern. The challenge is, Donald Trump has been repudiated numerous times for this type of rhetoric, or for his comments on Muslims or Mexicans or whatever, and it's never had an effect. So now the tension is going to be, what new tactic, what new message? He's really doubled down on standing by his protesters, standing by his campaign approach, and really, where's the end of that?
Yeah, we'll have to see where things move forward, and we have a very big contest on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So can't wait for that. John Allen and Leslie Sanchez, thanks so much for joining us.
Take care.